work session to order. We have our esteemed treasurer in the room. And we'll start off with special projects. Sandy, finish.
Okay, so we went through this at the past work session. And so I just want to recap the decisions that were made, and then we still have the sort of application that we haven't really talked about yet. So the decisions that were made last time were a minimum 25% match. Capital purchases would be capped at $20,000.
I have a question. To
Yes.
me, it seemed like that should be funding requests should be capped at $20,000.
I had it that capital purchases were $20,000.
Because we're just talking about special projects grants, right?
Yes.
Right.
And those, I thought that we just said 20,000 was the max we were going to do for any special projects grant.
That's not my recollection.
I don't remember.
Maybe I got that wrong.
It would
But
make, it might make,
But it might make sense to do it that way.
yeah, because there's
I
usually,
can't imagine that we're gonna have events. It'd be a big fancy event that was over 20,000.
Well, I need to check the ordinance to see what it says, because somewhere, whether it was in the ordinance or the old application, somewhere it says the entire fund could go to one request or be broken up.
well, it's $20,000 to be broken up.
Right, but
Sure, but-
somewhere in the existing policies, it says it could, in theory, all go to one project.
Right.
In the
So if we're talking about
slideshow-
changing that, that's significant.
In the slideshow from last night, it says capital projects less than 20,000 in events.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember when we were talking, and I didn't even go back and look at my notes, in which I could, and I should have, but I just had it in my head that it was just on the special projects things, we were gonna say, we're just gonna give 20,000 per group max.
See, I thought it was just for capital purchases, they could be more than 20,000 for other expenses.
Right.
Because the idea was to push them into one of the other programs if they're just doing
Right.
capital purchases.
Okay, my mind just kind of had that wrong in my.
So do we, but is that, I mean, it hasn't been set in stone. So is there an argument to be made for capping any request, events or capital purchases at 20? Because if you do it over, of course, for events, you run the risk that one person would, or one entity, they had a really big bang up event.
My note says 20,000 cap per project.
Which could be, I mean, depending on how you look at it, does that mean, are we saying,
Capital projects.
or just each entity?
Do you have a preference? We can just solve this because we get to make those decisions. But we have a preference on capping them all at 20 or just capping the capital purchases?
I'm trying to think now, because when we were talking, it seemed like when we were talking about it, when we looked at the different entities, didn't we think that there wasn't really anybody that was going to ask for more?
Well, and I was just looking, last year we had 4 entities that asked for more than 20,000.
Oh,
And were they operational or?
maybe that would be shuttled into the other group now.
Yeah.
One was, I would say 2 were operational, 2 were projects.
So we did have 2 projects that asked for more than 20.
And were the projects or were they events?
Well, one was the
That's the
Wendy
education
Basin
thing?
fiber, which was $800,000. And then one was to do redo the church on the Lone Rock,
So both capital.
the roof on the Lone Rock church.
And maybe that's right, because now we're doing, if it's more than that, it's just going to be in that other group
Mhm. For capital
for
projects.
capital projects. So what we're saying is that special projects entities that are looking to apply for a special projects grant can go higher than that. I guess I don't need to cap, I don't need the cap. I just wasn't sure how we worded it when we were talking about it.
Do you have a preference? You okay with events if an event came in that was over 20,000? Because that's really what we're talking about, is whether we'll fund events over 20,000. I think so.
Well, I'm thinking, so it doesn't look like it.
It's early.
That's me. I guess my only thought there is if we do a cap, then we have more funds for other projects, for other employees. But then we're gonna get all the applications at the same time. And if we don't get as many and somebody else wants 35, but we have plenty of money, why can't we give them 35? They ask for 35 and we want to spread it out to other people, we can say, well, we're only going to give you 20. Here's your 20.
Okay.
What do you think? I don't know. Does that make any sense?
I don't have a,
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are, the cap of purchases, cap's fine, but I wouldn't put a restriction on the other. You don't know what's gonna come in,
Right,
and
we don't have
ultimately, if the funds are available and it's an awesome project, I know.
Right,
And there's not an
exactly.
alternate choice, like for projects, there's an
Yeah.
alternate choice.
right, for events though.
For events, there's not.
Okay,
Okay, I'm okay with that, I just, it wasn't quite how I
Sure.
remembered it, so I thought I'd better ask.
okay.
Okay?
So capital purchase is capped at 20.
All right, so we're at $20,000 for capital purchases, no limit on events. Applications must be for specific projects or events, not for normal operational expenses. We decided we did not want a map,
Correct.
so that would be left up to basically staff discretion when they come in to put them in the appropriate pool if they didn't put themselves in the appropriate pool. That we will move the grants into the treasurer's office. The review team is going to be set up as the community development coordinator, the court administrator, and an elected official to be named later. That funds that are not awarded, not claimed, or that are returned will be carried forward into the next year, not made available later on in the same year. The merit review, said benefit to the county, 60%, matching funds leverage, 25%, timeliness, necessity of funding, 15%. Okay. Is there anything else that you guys think?
I had it, well, since this is top of my mind, because this came up last night, and so I want to ask Nathan about this. Do we know now how much we have to disperse for special projects?
We will at budget time, yeah.
Okay,
I haven't run calculations yet.
okay.
Yeah.
Because that came up last night on the how, if we know how much before the applications are coming in
Yeah.
is available, so I
Yeah,
didn't
it's
know that
calculated as
last
part of
night,
the
so I
budget.
kind of spoke
Yeah.
off the top of my head, and I think it was probably inaccurate when I said, so I thought, maybe I'll ask somebody who knows what they're talking about today, and,
Yeah, it's one of the calculations we do.
okay.
I had a question, are we, how much, I can wait until we actually get to it.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll probably forget. Later in here, we said something about establishing a limit on special projects fund. And then my question, and I wrote jotted down, was, isn't this in the ordinance?
No. So the question that I was raising there, that I was going to bring up, was that the court has sort of signaled that they want to fund the best projects versus the older style of let's give everybody something, which leaves the potential that there could be left over at the end of the year, more than what has happened in the past, which it's been very rare that money was left over. So that creates a situation where that fund could theoretically build and build and build. And so do you guys want to, because it's not currently set up in the ordinance, is that something that you guys want to tackle now or wait till later?
See what happens.
And see if you want to say it won't go over $250,000 or something like that?
Thank you, I see what you're saying.
I mean, I think I'd like to see what actually happens if it does start building and we have a pretty sizable chunk, then I think that may be maybe it's something that we look at that and say, okay, we're gonna move that into the project, one of the other grant silos or something, if it builds too much where we feel like we're, or we may just decide from a policy perspective, it's good to hold on to that long term, and I don't know.
Right, I think probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the natural place for it would be to go back into the economic development fund. Is that?
That's the way most of those work, if there is a cap.
Okay, yeah, that.
Some of them are
sounds good.
specific, they're supposed to be dispersed as something in particular, but.
Right. I was mostly just thinking that we're putting more restrictions, we're moving a lot of people into other, so the potential is that we will have some leftover in these years. Just wanted to put that in the back of your heads.
Okay.
Maybe more people then though will feel like they can come and ask for once they know that there's extra funds there, and oh, well, we didn't think we'd get any because now we feel like we could, so we'll ask for it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see how it goes.
Okay. All right, so moving into the actual application, basically broke into the 5 different categories, same as the other ones. The category 1 is just the basic information, name, address, phone number type of stuff. Number 2 here, project narrative, is the first essay question. Right now, it basically asks these 4 things. What's your organization's purpose and role in the county? What is the project time frame? How are you going to use the county funding if you get it? And then how does your project fit within the county's strategic priority areas of economic development, infrastructure, and livability, quality of life? Is there any?
No, I'm fine with that.
Nope, looks like what we discussed.
All right. And then the next section has these 4 questions for more specific project information. We asked the question about, has your organization received project funding from the county in the past? If so, please explain what you did with it. Is your project proposed to be implemented in phases over time? So that kind of goes into the, maybe we don't want to give a lump sum, maybe we're giving it out in chunks, something like that. Is it going to forecast to go beyond this budget year? So some of those considerations that we might have to look into. We asked, because match is such an important thing here, what other funding sources has your organization gone to? And it says prior to making your request to county court, because we have said we are the funders of last resort, not the first resort. And then the last one is describing your long-term plan for how you plan to operate and maintain your project after construction. So that's really geared towards if it's a capital investment type of project. But also, I think, if this is an annual event that's being put on, what's your plan to keep this going year after year?
If we don't fund it, yeah.
So are there any other questions that you would like to have answered?
I think for number 4, we might want to, if we're getting after the event thing too, we might want to reword that and just
Clarify that.
say, describe your long-term plan for operating and maintaining your project or event, and then just cut the after construction out.
Okay.
Or just say, you know, in future years or something.
Right. Okay.
So that we don't, so our events people still answer that question, because otherwise I think they'll read
Because
that
it
and
looks like
say,
they're-
that's
Yeah,
not
it doesn't-
applicable. and-
Yeah, no, I can definitely clarify that.
And then, I mean, that looks good to me. I don't have any other.
That's good.
Anything from you, Sherry?
Nope.
Good?
It's good.
Okay.
So then, after that, we've got the budget, which is just the standard budget form that we put in for all of them, and the match funding form. And so my question here is, do you guys want to ask for more in the capital investments, the bigger grants? We asked for the most recent financial statement and a business or operational plan, if you had one. That seems like maybe a little bit much for
Seems
this
like
level.
overkill for the special projects.
Because when you think about what entities are going to ask for special project grants, it's like,
A lot of them are going to be our littler.
yeah, they're not going to have that.
Right.
So for an entity though that say was trying to raise money over time, I'm just wondering if we would have something from them that shows, you know, how they're doing, how.
So that raises a big question I think we should maybe talk about, is some of these organizations that are applying for special projects in the past, and and I'm thinking in particular last year was the Woolery project and the Arlington Education Foundation. They were both not so much grants or projects or events, they were more fundraising requests. And that kind of goes a little bit against our not doing, you know,
Right.
this is money that's needed to be used this year, not to be going into your bank account.
So to clarify, so Arlington Education Fund, that one was to build their,
Their
Endowment.
endowment for
Endowment,
their,
correct. Okay.
yeah, scholarship endowment.
And then like the Woolery, all I was thinking was the one that came to my mind was like the Woolery event that they have every year, and they use the money that we give them, it is spent at the event, you know, I mean, they use it to put on their thing. But I was just curious if we could ask for information about how their, you know, how it is going and how, you know, if they have been able to raise money, you know, kind of what their financial information is. at
Yeah,
this
I
point.
don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, it's an ongoing
Yeah,
project, but,
right.
I mean, the Cultural Coalition's also given grants, and we've always asked for,
Right.
Well, I would
And
hope
so-
they would include some
or
of that in their
designated-
long-term.
or maybe just designated a specific thing, so we sponsored the band one year. We said, look, the rest of this is a fundraiser, it's not really the goal of the Cultural Coalition, we're not gonna fund that, but if we would like to fund the band, we'll pay for the band to come, because the band's actually cultural, or
Right,
So-
falls into here.
falls into our program.
Right, and so one thing, you know, going back to the last slide here that I kind of skipped over when I read it, is down on number 4, it does say, if you have a developed operation or business plan, please attach that to the application.
Yeah.
So I did ask for that.
okay.
Okay. I would just like to see,
Yeah.
see that information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Now, on the matching funds
Yes.
attachment that you put in, it says, we took out the need for the signature,
Yes.
but
Right,
here it
yeah,
still said that.
the
didn't you?
verbiage, right.
Yeah.
Well, it was caught for me.
I was gonna say, I think that.
I changed it in like 3 places and missed it there.
Yes, good. You do your search, look for this and all these.
Okay, and then, I mean, my last slide, we already kind of tackled. So is there anything else, anything? Okay.
Are did we go over the timeline, or is that next? Are we,
Well, I didn't make a slide for it. We kind of talked about it last time.
yeah,
It's basically just the same.
it's in the
um,
page 5. Are we good with that too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and on that one thing that I did sort of clarify, not so much on where it's laid out there, but in the application, or in the guidebook, I should say, is that April 15th is when the applications can be turned in. So we can have them available a month ahead of time, but we're limiting to that 3-week window when they're gonna be turned in, so they're not just streaming in all the time. So I just made that clarification.
Okay. Anything else on this? We've got it on the agenda for this afternoon to approve this if we're ready, so.
I think we're ready.
Okay. Okay, what's next?
Reporting,
Woohoo!
fun stuff. So we basically have our 3 grant programs, and each one, we kind of need to talk about 3 different types of reporting. The progress reporting, a final report, and then fiscal reporting. So just looking at the operational support grants, first question is, do you want progress reporting for operational support grants? And if so, how do you want that structured?
My notes say, yes, we want progress reporting. And how often, I think it depends on the project. So I'm not sure, what do you think?
Monthly and quarterly might be pretty often for a lot of them.
Yeah, but, and some of them, it might be, yeah, that's, like, we got it, we spent it, and, it's over, so. And then some of them, it's an ongoing, we're using it for this amount. The project's still going on. I'd like to see it written
Yeah.
to start with, and then the final report. Someone we might have to come and tell us, but I guess if we wanted that, we could ask them to come and give us a presentation on the project. There you go.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking for the operational piece, that because we put such emphasis on their sustainability plans, that maybe having an update specifically about what they're doing in that strategic planning process.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I mean, I feel like that maybe is toward, maybe that's part of their final report. I'm not sure how to capture that. And I'm kind of, I guess I'm kind of leaning on operational support, that I'm not sure what they're going to have to report to us beyond any efforts they're making to
Right.
do their strategic planning. Because for most of these guys, they're gonna just continue their business as normal. I mean, I don't know what the school district would come in, for instance, and report to us on. Our teachers are still in the classroom, we're still teaching, you know, like I'm just not sure how instructive that would be for the court.
Yeah.
What I am interested in seeing from at least this sort of pool of candidates is how are they progressing toward having a plan in place? And for those that maybe are coming in already with a plan in place, so how are they progressing along that plan? So that's my thought in the operational. But I'm not sure when the best time, to me, requiring it too early, I'm not sure that people are gonna have anything to report to it. Like, I would like them to have the funds and have an opportunity to start that strategic planning process. So I'm kind of feeling like this is a little, sort of really late in the fiscal year that we would be asking them to come back. And realistically, if we are asking them to submit their sustainability plans during the next application cycle, that's gonna be about this time next year that they should have those plans in place. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here.
No, that all makes sense.
And like with everything, we can make it more restrictive in future years as we kind of learn to see how things go.
I mean, I'm feeling like a final report for these folks that includes a sustainability plan. And those sustainability plans obviously need to be in before they need to be coming in with the next application cycle.
Yeah, I think don't make a grant with that one.
Yeah.
If you're gonna put the restriction on it. But that'd be the same with the final report, I don't know. I imagine most of the projects would be done by a year later.
Yeah.
So maybe not, I mean, if it's a capital project or something.
Yeah, but we're just talking about operational support now.
Operational
That's
support.
where my mind was
Yeah.
going
Yeah,
to, and it's because, yeah. that's
No,
when I was
they
answering
could,
these
I think
questions,
they could
wasn't
answer
thinking
that question
specific,
by,
yeah.
you know, 3/4 of the fiscal year later.
Yeah.
I don't see why.
Yeah.
If nothing else, they could tell you what they think they're gonna do with it in the last quarter.
I think it'd be good to see a report before the next grant cycle, before they're requesting more funds.
But that's something that's being required with their, if they ask for funds again,
Yeah.
we're requiring them to show us that sustainability. But it would be good to see in case, to try to help some of these people figure it out, getting outside. I'd like to see it before the next grant cycle, you're right.
So maybe requested quarterly, must be submitted before next grant cycle.
That's a lot of reports to deal with.
Yeah.
For
Maybe
operations.
requested quarterly. You know, maybe you don't request it.
I mean, what I'm thinking is that there would be one sort of report in the third quarter, which would be in time for our budget process. Which those are gonna come in anyway with the applications, if that's our requirement. And then a final report. Or do we need a final report? I mean, I don't know. The operations is a little bit stickier, I think we need to figure out.
Yeah. It's a different,
It's hard for me too, but I think you would have to say we would need a final report, because if they don't come back and ask for money next year, you wouldn't see.
How they spent it, okay.
true.
So I'm thinking, rather than do two, what I'm thinking is that the folks that receive operational support this year will have a final report. There's a separate requirement, which is when, if they apply again, they're submitting sustainability plans. So I don't know that we need to do two, right? So, because we're only interested, well, we're not only interested, but the main point of the sustainability plan is for repeat recipients. So they're gonna need to do that anyway as part of the regular application process. So I don't know that there needs to be two reporting periods for that. So for me, there would be one final report that comes in the end of after the fiscal year is completed. But those folks that are coming back to us the second year, there'll be accountability in between, is what I'm saying, because of our application is requiring that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
No, projects will be different, I think, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
operational,
Yeah.
this is,
And-
because I'm not sure what they would report to us on. I mean, they're operating.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so then, getting into the final report and when it's gonna be due. So what I propose is that they would be due by July 31st, which is after the budget cycle, after these would be gone through and all that, and I understand people's concerns, but it's prior to signing the agreement, the grant agreement. And so that's how you hold them accountable, is they might go through, but if they don't do their final reporting, they're not gonna get a grant agreement, they're not gonna get the money.
Well, the other piece of that too is that their sustainability plans are in as part of that application process. So the main sort of thing that we're really looking for from them has to be submitted for them even to be in that funding pool. So I'm actually okay with that. I think that it would be a little odd to have them reporting on a fiscal year they haven't completed yet. Does that work for you?
I hope so. No, the only thing I was just a little bit worried about is telling somebody earlier in the process that, yeah, we're gonna approve this grant, and then something happens, and then they find out that, because they didn't do this last step, that they're not going to get funding. But, I guess.
But that is in the application, like she
Right.
said, though, they have to submit that.
And that's where that last bullet point is, when you award it, you're gonna say, these are awarded pending a signed grant agreement, which requires the reporting to be up to date.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then the other, still sticking with operational here, fiscal reporting. And so I'm gonna drag this back a little bit to the progress reporting. Is fiscal reporting something that you would want to have throughout the year? Maybe not so much a breakdown of what their, so-and-so teacher's been in the class, but do we want them to say, you gave us $100,000 the first quarter, we spent 25, the second quarter we spent 25, the third quarter we spent the rest of the 50. Is that something that you're worried about? And then,
As far as what the final reporting is going to be, is that information going to be required in their final report?
and that's my second question, is how detailed do you want the fiscal reporting in the final report?
I mean, I'm not sure, I guess I'm not sure what that gives us or the public in knowing the tempo of their expenditures, if that makes any sense. Like, I'm not sure, like, I really see the reporting as sort of a tool to make sure that the entities receiving this are accountable, that they're spending it for what they said. I'm not sure that the timing of where they spend it is actually that critical. So I'm kind of thinking the final report is including reporting of how those funds were spent, that that is sufficient for the public's understanding of where that money went. Because I don't necessarily, I mean, I don't want to get us in a situation where we're questioning school superintendents or other people on why they're spending and the tempo of when they're spending, which months they're deciding to spend and why. I feel like that leads us down a road of kind of micromanaging our folks that are coming in. So, I mean, it's important that folks know, that the public knows where it went, what it's supported within those taxing districts or entities, but I'm not sure that it matters the timing.
Yeah, I think it can be taken care of in the final reporting, Jim.
So then, how detailed do you want the final report? Is a, most recent financial document what you want? Do you want to see actual receipts?
Summary. Receipts may be requested or more detail, but
Yeah.
just want a 30,000 foot view, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we need
I mean,
These are the big things. We spend it on personnel. We spend it on.
Yeah.
to. Yeah, they don't have to tell us which teacher
No.
they paid for.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we could request a breakdown, but a lot of detail gets lost in it. I mean, as far as sitting in a meeting talking about it,
Yeah. And I'm not sure it's necessary. For us to know that.
Okay. All right, so then we'll move on to the capital investment projects. And same basic questions. Progress reporting.
I mean, for me, I think it depends on the project.
Yeah, that's what I.
If it's a large project that has phases and it's,
Right.
then I think it's good for particularly large infrastructure projects, fiber builds or something. It's probably good for us to be tracking sort of how that's being deployed and those kinds of things. But for some other ones, it may just not really be that applicable. So I guess I would just, kind of how I envisioned it as I thought it might make sense to sort of have our sort of base expectation for reporting, and then for some of these projects, just to be able to look and see, actually this is something that's important enough to the community, or it's drawn out long enough that we would like to be updated over the course of the project, and have that kind of flexibility built into the agreements that we're signing, depending on what the project actually is. And
Yeah. I agree, yeah.
So what's the baseline?
so for me, the baseline is the final report. And then if there's additional check-in or progress reporting, then that's sort of taken on a case-by-case basis. If it's a capital project that's going to be built in a couple of months, then I don't know that we need
Right.
ongoing. If it's a year-and-a-half project that's going to stretch and impact a lot of, of people, or something that's rolling out in waves or something, then that might be more appropriate for a progress report. What do you guys
So-
think about that?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And it would be micromanaging again on small projects if we were asked to give us a progress report every couple of weeks, or, like you say, if it's only the last.
A short period, and they've got a building up or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
right.
yeah.
Put them in roof on. We don't need them to come and tell us that
Every shingle.
they, yeah.
So I'll just add in there that means that when we get to each of these individual decisions at that time for each project, we'll need to remember to lay that out when we're making those approvals. Is that something that you want the staff review to make recommendations on?
I mean, it might be
Wouldn't hurt.
helpful.
Oh,
If
definitely.
there's a recommendation that something needs sort of more oversight, I think that's appropriate for staff to sort of flag those in the
Me too.
process.
Okay. Okay, so then we get back to the final reporting. And I'm proposing the same thing, to July 31st, prior to signing a grant agreement. You know, and these are projects that you wouldn't expect as many repeat year in, year out. There may be a
They should
few,
all be different.
but
So question on final reports though, is what happens with capital projects that are spanning
Right.
over
Go
2
longer than a
fiscal
year.
years?
So-
Fiber is a good example. Takes a while to
In-
roll it out if we,
yeah, and this might be a better question for Nathan, but to me, I think it has to be what's going to be spent in this year, to be budgeted in this year by the county, and what's going to be spent next year, they would need to come back and ask for the rest of it. So if it's a multi-year
Gotta
project,
be able to
they
anticipate
would need
that.
to come back year in, year out.
With
To
the
actually
progress
make that
report, you
request.
could anticipate that, I think. so.
You can anticipate it, but
Yeah.
still, it's got to be.
No, they need to
budgeting
report it, but I'm
process.
saying,
You can't budget money for
but
next
by
year's
July
budget
31st, that's
now.
too late. I mean, we've already, the budget's
yeah, but,
adopted, but.
because here's my thing, right? It's like, let's throw out a scenario. We'll use the fiber belt that we did with the city. That is spanned far longer than what I think anybody ever anticipated and whether, and the funding had to be in place to have when we start construction. So if we had, for instance, required the city to come back to us a second time and it was up in the air about whether they would have funding the second time, they probably wouldn't have been able to move forward with that project because they needed the money up front to be able to. So with these large construction projects, they're not going to want to outlay capital under the hope that we fund them in a second cycle.
And if they ask for 750,000, we're going to give it to them, and if it takes them 2 years to complete, it takes them 2 years to
Yeah.
get it.
So I'm feeling like rather than have a firm date that all of this have to come in, it's got to be the length.
Yeah.
I mean,
End
the
of
final
project.
report needs to capture the end of the project to me.
End of project. That's what I wrote down in my notes, was end of project, because these are totally different than.
Right, and I would say, I mean, that's a due date, that's a drop dead date. So if they have a project that lasts for 3 months and they're done, they can turn their final report in then. Going to something that goes longer, multi-year, I think that would just have to be a specific to that agreement, very clearly laid out. And it might just be, you will give us an annual report on this date or something like that.
I mean, why can't we just do something like final reports are due 30 days after the
After
completion of the project?
I like that.
And then if it's a 2-year project, then it comes in 30 days after.
Maybe
It
60
says-
days, because a lot of times you're still paying expenses 30 days after
Or
completion.
60 days. I mean,
so
that's-
A little bit longer.
And you could also say, you could also do it both ways. You could say 30 days or 60 days at the end, following the end of the fiscal year, or at the end of the project.
I like end of the project.
So then how do you handle it if that organization comes back the next year with a new request for a different project? How do you decide if they are in compliance, if they are spending the money that you gave them last year properly?
Well, I'm anticipating that the ones that are 2-year projects are the ones that we're going to be having progress reports on. Because those are going to be significant, long-term kind of projects where they would have phases and be updated. So I would anticipate that those interim sort of reporting requirements might tip us off to whether they're behaving appropriately and following the agreement terms. So that, I mean, that's, I just think it's, when you put an arbitrary date down, I mean, construction just doesn't work that way. Is
Yeah.
my feeling.
Right, but again, I mean, that's meant to be a deadline so that we can get into the next contract. So I would be more comfortable with an addition that said must be in within 60 days or, well, I don't know.
I don't know that you need a firm date.
I think an annual report could be due on,
Yeah.
July 31st. And then, a final report could be due 60 days after project completion. So then you're still getting that report in at the end of the fiscal year, and you can see what they've been spending that year.
What do you think?
This might be one that we start off with something and then it gets revised as we find out how it,
Yeah.
true.
I guess for those big projects, first of all, I'm not sure how many people are gonna be coming to us with those big projects and then coming to us again, another big, it's like, chances are likely if that's their project, that's where they're focused their energy and attention. They're probably not a lot of bandwidth to take on another large capital project, would be my assumption. I guess I think it makes sense for us to have more flexibility on those big projects and determining what's appropriate. To me, a 60-day, after the completion, a 60-day final report, regardless of when that completion sort of takes place. And then we have the flexibility in the grant agreements to have interim or progress reporting that would be, sort of holding that entity accountable to the terms of the agreement.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Okay, so 60 days, is what we're at. Okay. And then fiscal reporting.
This one, I think it's appropriate to have, for capital projects, they have budgets, they know exactly, or should know exactly where that money went to. I think it's appropriate to require more detail there. Thoughts?
Agreed.
Do we need to see receipts, that level of detail, or just?
I don't think we want to get that deep,
That's a lot
but
of
yeah.
paperwork.
Some
May
line
request if
items,
there's
line item
something.
reporting, we spent this much on this and this much on
And
this.
a little bit of this gets into if we're gonna have some of these projects be reimbursable. Now, if we're doing it reimbursable, is it enough for them to send something on their letterhead saying, I need $50,000 released? Or do we want to see
Why they need the $50,000.
Yeah,
an
like
actual
detail.
invoice for their?
Reimbursable
See what?
invoices.
Yeah.
Right.
For reimbursable receipts and invoices, our own controls.
Okay, so, do you want to just line up, as part of the quarterly or whatever progress report that we require on individual projects, do you want to just line up with that, a fiscal summary?
Summary.
With those, okay.
Okay.
I'm good. You good, Sharon?
Good.
Okay. One more time, special projects.
Woohoo! I feel like these are going to be small enough that for me, a final report suffices.
And on fiscal, you want to just go with summary again?
Yeah, I think just a, to larger,
Oh, excuse me.
like a high-level summary kind of thing, not I don't need to see receipts. I don't think for that.
Okay. So then this is mostly just a reminder, we'll need to set those specific requirements in the individual grant agreements, which we kind of talked about. We'll have as part of the staff report, some recommendations for those. But we'll just need to be careful that when we're approving them, we aren't going to be able to just do a blanket approval. We'll need to approve them individually with those specifications. And we're going to have to, for the reporting, we'll come up with some sort of reporting templates or forms. for
Can I have
people to
long
have.
consent agendas for
Yeah.
these weeks?
Consent agenda this week, This meeting is excellent.
I'm exercising the
Like-
consent to do
Getting things on there, I was very impressed.
that.
Okay, so now we're moving, is there anything else on reporting, maybe before I move on?
What are we moving on to now?
Loans, business
Loans.
Okay,
development.
this is where I have to bring up my,
Oh, yeah.
My issue
Let's,
and-
before we move on, let's go back.
yes, because, okay, so, I'm receiving emails from one of the entities that we have, well, I'll just say it, there's no, I don't want to be, the internship program. The internship program, and I think that since that funding has come from a different source, not endowment, or not the, it's coming from gain share line item.
Oh, okay.
So in the past, for the past couple of years that we have helped fund the internship program, I'm getting the feeling from the tone of the emails that it's felt that this is a different thing. It is, you know, it's different. It doesn't fall into these categories of what we've been talking about recently. And then there might be some other entities that you were saying that have kind of also fall into a different little niche. And so I just wanted to talk to you guys about that. Is this going to be for everything we've ever given money for, or are there going to be special situations or circumstances or entities that don't go through this process?
So where this has come up actually, like we had a question from the city, for instance, because we have a partnership with the pool that we funded. There's what were the other examples that we came up with? The predator control, or
Right, the APHIS predator control, which is,
program.
you know, so there's some of these things that we have IGAs or service agreements in place for that for some reason they still kind of went through this process, maybe it's not. The fire services is another one. We have an IGA that says we'll pay $50,000, but we run it through the grant process and give them $60,000 instead of what's in the agreement, stuff like that.
So,
Does it?
so my general feeling has been, see what you guys think about this, is if there is a legal instrument underlying the relationship, so if there is an IGA in place with another taxing district, another agreement that previous courts have agreed to, that this is a funding priority, a partnership, that falls outside of the grant process, and that the grant process is really meant for programs and things that we are not a partner to, that we are not.
Well, and you can't decline payment, we've got it at IGA, so.
Well, exactly.
So your hands are kind of tied anyway, I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't even matter if they submit a grant.
So to me,
Right.
in the instance of like the fire district, my expectation would be that we meet the terms of the IGA, and if they are requesting funding above the terms of the IGA, that request would be an operational expense request over and above the agreement that we have laid out in the IGA. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that sound?
So my only question on that is what if, back to the operating funds, if you don't ask for it before, and then there's 1 year or two years down the line that you are going over your IGA, which I think it's written into our IGA that we would come back if we came over 50,000.
Yes.
But if it's not written back and they don't come back that first year, that wipes them out, right?
Potentially.
Can't we revisit the IGA?
Yeah, I would
I don't
anticipate
know why you wouldn't just rewrite.
that what we
Yeah.
would do is just, if the IGA is not meeting the partnership, that's a decision that's made outside of the grant process. It's just we've had a situation, so like with the fire district, I think what we would need to do is go back to Shannon and say, if the funding is insufficient under the IGA, then we need to revisit the IGA rather than addressing it
Right.
through the grant process.
Because to me, they're just totally separate things
Yeah.
entirely. And
To me, it's,
shouldn't overlap, the IGA should overlap into special projects, grants, or
yeah.
capital grants, or.
What is an IGA?
Intergovernmental agreement. So it's an agreement that two governmental entities or taxing districts have signed for joint services or projects and that kind of thing.
So this specific situation where Last year, we gave 50, I think the first year, they had 5,000 from another entity, we gave 5,000. Last year, I think we gave 15,000, and they were able to, with that money, do 4 internships. And I don't believe there's probably no IGA in place.
So that
Then what do you do if
that
there's
was
no
a
idea?
sticky wicket because really there's no entity on the other end. It's an individual. And so last year we tried to pull some stuff back and do more in-house with that program because of that. So, I mean, we talked about making it just a flat-out county program instead. So I don't know, that's a strange
Well,
one.
if it's an individual requesting the grant funds, then we wouldn't, that wouldn't fall into our grant
So what would either need to happen
eligibility.
is we would either need to decide that it's our program and we're funding it. But that would mean that we're running it wholly. And so that's sort of a budgetary decision that we would need to decide if that's something that we want to do. If we decided that we did not want to do that, then to me, Alan would need to find an appropriate entity that is eligible to be the sponsor. So if a school district, for instance, wanted to be the sponsor of that and put in a request, a grant request for it, then that would be the way to do it if it wasn't going to be a county-operated program.
So if he, say, for example, he went with option 2 and had the school district be the entity, would it go through this grant process?
Yes. Yeah. If it's not one of our programs, or we don't have an underlying IGA, then it's a grant. I mean, to me, the difference between like the IGA is that that's a partnership that we're, say, signing with the city, and we both know the terms of that. It's laid out, it's a joint service that we're offering between them. With something like that, where if we did not have control over our selection process and all that kind of thing, there wasn't an established relationship with the school district about the service, then to me, it's then doing a grant or doing a program that we are providing funding to, that we're not a partner.
Out of these 2 options, which one do you prefer?
I mean, my personal thing, I don't know that it is within the county's scope to be providing grant program or internship programs. I think if we want to have an intern within working for the county and want to offer that opportunity, that we should do that in-house and put some money aside to hire an intern if we think that's worthwhile. But otherwise, I would like to see that come through as a regular grant request, and if there's an entity that wants to administer that program and make the case for why we should fund it, I'd be happy to have that in the mix.
So as far as a response to this, it would be probably option 2. That, yeah, it needs an entity, sponsoring entity, and we go through the grant process. Okay. Just some of these are kind of, especially if it says it's happened in the past, it makes it a little bit difficult to, like I said, I wasn't sure how to respond.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how to answer the
I mean,
question.
unless this court has a burning desire to run its own grant program and make that part of the county function.
You mean internship?
Sorry, I keep mixing the 2. Internship program, no, we're throwing out the grant program too.
Let's stop.
I've
Let's not do
had it. I've had it. This was great, but
Well,
we're
I
done.
wish you would've said something a month ago.
This is great, but we're done. Unless we have just this burning desire to start an internship program within the county structure and have it be staffed and all of that, I'm not sure that that's our role. But if somebody else wants to do it,
And it's a good program. We want to continue to support it, but he'll have to go through, make it fit into the.
And it needs to go probably through the school.
Yes, well,
That they need
no,
to-
could it go
needs to
through
be
the
the
Chamber of
applicant?
Commerce or the
It
city?
It could go through the Chamber of
4-H,
Commerce, it
you
could
could
go
go through a
through-
lot.
Yeah,
The
there's-
Education Foundation.
he just needs to find a sponsoring
Yes.
organization that would be sort of the steward of that money and do the reporting and
Right.
everything we're requiring.
Yeah, it would be nice if it was a county-wide organization,
Yeah.
so that we make sure that the opportunities were being provided, but if if he just wants to do it for Arlington, then maybe we can find somebody that's interested in doing it just for Condon.
Okay, thank you. That clears that up. So what about these other ones?
Now you're
It's
making me
just
think
different
about that. We're drawing a line again. You know I hate that line.
No, we don't have to provide every service that is a good service in the county. It's okay for others to take that on.
I'm sure about that.
I'm sure. I am absolutely positive.
I think, I guess we can't tell you how to run this program. I'd just like to see it be open to anybody, any resident of the county, but that's just.
But you can make it clear that he's got a better chance of being funded if it's countywide.
Yeah, because why can't he run it countywide? I mean,
You could.
There's no reason, but it's up to him or to the organization that he brings in with
we
it.
could go to I Own Schools or Sherman County, you know, whatever.
Don't get started.
Is that what this work session's about?
Don't get started.
I have something in my eyes.
So Matt, you gotta leave the room.
She does, she's never done. For the others, though, I'm just thinking, if there's a legal instrument, another agreement that the county's already made, to me, those are joint services that we've decided as part of a county, like, this is a county-supported program, basically. To me,
Well, we
those are-
kind of talked
those
about
are
maybe
different.
some of them would be better served by an instrument because they've been funded for a long period of time. And maybe there's another entity that's hard funded, I guess you'd say, that's pretty similar. So that might be a discussion for another day though.
But for like Catherine on our intention then I think it sounds like would be that the IGA is just kind of the instrument, and so you wouldn't have to come in and do
Yeah,
it.
and ours does have a trigger in about funding, but I believe it has the,
It says
we would,
up to 50,000 a year, but if it goes over, you can come back and make a request to go
yeah,
beyond that.
which we're not,
We might need to
we're
look
getting
at
closer.
Every year, a little bit.
We're getting closer with the wages going up, but we're not there.
Did you have a look at the loan?
Yeah.
It's
But-
a loan forever.
So just on the pool scenario, if, say, at the end of the next 2 years, when that IGA goes, if for some reason it wasn't to be renewed and it would cease to be, does the pool become a fundable entity at that point or not? Or do we just really need to make sure we keep that IGA going?
I think keep the IGA.
I think he,
No.
no, but I do, I
But
mean,
I mean, there could be a change, perhaps the new city council says we want to be out of the pool business.
yeah.
I mean, it's possible.
Yes.
It could happen.
So my sense is if something like that did happen, I would almost, in terms of the operational side, even though they didn't go through the grant process, because we funded it in another way, I would almost be, I think I would make that an exception and sort of count the court has previously decided that this was worthy of a partnership in funding and that could be.
No matter who operates the pool also.
Yeah,
Right.
If it goes back to
Right.
the owners of the pool, which is the school.
yeah.
Which is a fundable entity.
Which is a fundable entity,
Yeah.
so I think we would probably be okay in that. We're talking about still some of our outliers that are in gray areas.
Okay, funds outside the program.
So the other question that came up yesterday I wanted to ask was, what about organizations that want to make multiple requests in a year? Whether that be one operational and one project, or maybe they want to turn in 3 special project applications. Where do we stand on those scenarios?
That's a good question.
That's why I passed it on.
So on the larger question, if I have no problems with somebody, for instance, submitting an operational request in a special projects,
Right.
you know, so across different, or an operational and a capital request. In terms of special projects, I mean, if we're judging each project on its merit, I don't know why we would limit, if they're good projects and they're worthy of funding, I don't know why we would limit. Somebody wants to be ambitious and send us 5 good projects that they're all gonna be completed and we have the funding for, and the staff is making a recommendation that it's worthy of I don't know why we wouldn't fund those. So,
Totally agree. I don't think we have enough, we don't have an overabundance of groups in our county that they don't overlap each other anyway, so that all these people are on this committee and some of them are over here and then some of these are over here. So they know what's going on a lot in those.
Yeah.
And what this group's doing can benefit this group as well. That special project may have benefits to 3 or 4
yeah, the
other
staff
groups.
may be able to look in their review and say, well, this entity has 3 good projects, but they're already getting 1 funded, so maybe their subsequent projects end up not being prioritized as high because they're already getting funding for one of their projects. But I would not necessarily just dictate policy on that and just let the staff kind of take a look at who's in the pool.
So as somebody that's gonna be doing that, I would really prefer direction. Because I don't wanna get to a situation where
We showed favoritism.
where I think, well, this is the #1 project and this one from the same group is the #2 project, but it's the same group, so I'm gonna put them lower. I don't know that
I'm saying.
unless you specifically
I'm saying
give
if
direction.
I'm saying if you've got if 2 projects are close and one is coming from an organization that's already been
So
funded.
if we're like down at the funding line.
Or, yeah. I mean, I think it's okay for staff to have a little bit of discretion in saying that, these projects are scored almost exactly the same, but one has already received funding for a different project, so we're gonna go ahead and prioritize this one. Don't change the ranking and make the 20th project the second because the ones before have all been like, not that kind of thing.
Right.
But, I think you guys are professional. You can exercise a little bit of discretion, and if we disagree with you, we'll rearrange it. So, that's
Go ahead and do all that work and then
that's
we'll
kind of
change
the
it.
reality is if we really disagree with that discretion, we'll change it.
Okay, so before we dive into the wonderful world of business development loans, anything else in grants?
We're ready.
Ready?
Oh, Leslie's
Oh.
up on her seat.
I'm
She's
glad
like,
you are.
Let's do this.
You're not ready now?
She's not ready.
Okay, so just to start out with just some background, and then I'm really just gonna leave most of this up to discussion and see where we wanna go with some things. Business Development Loan Program is part of the Economic Enhancement Fund Ordinance, so it came into being about 1991. It comes from the host fees from Waste Management, fluctuates up and down from year to year based on the percentage. Currently, it's 4% of host fees, so just to put that in perspective, the special projects grants also get 4%, so we're looking $170,000, $180,000 a year. It's capped at $750,000 per year, which is up from $500,000 a few years ago. And PCDC just claimed $750,000 out of that line item, so we are back to zero.
So we're done.
That was easy.
For the year. So we can't give any more loans this year. But next year, we'll have another $170,000, $180,000, whatever comes
So
in.
next year, meaning
Next
Fiscal year, yes.
1920?
July
I have
1st.
it by now, but
July 1st.
Okay, I have some questions.
Sure,
about
go ahead.
Where our money is right now.
Okay.
Our hardware is self-explanatory, but what is Gray and Son?
They're a renewable energy installer sales.
Yeah, so what you can kind of see here is there's $1 million out there in loans right now.
Right.
That does not include the money that's been given to PCDC for the housing program.
Okay.
So there's
Well,
really 2 million-ish.
Yeah, but that's more of a reimbursement, they're not making payments, it's just a reimbursement.
It's a no interest loan.
Yeah. If there's funds left after the program ends, or they're supposed to give them back. I'd almost call it a grant instead of a loan, you know?
For PCDC, yeah.
Whatever, I mean, put whatever lid we want on it, but.
Well, but the loans that they give out for the housing are supposed to be repaid, and then that
That should pay
is supposed to
down,
be
though.
repaid to us, isn't it?
No.
Really?
I don't think so.
It's some
Yeah,
date,
I misunderstood that.
at some date.
Right,
But they're
at
not,
the end
they
of the
don't,
program.
at the end of the program.
Yeah, at the
But
end of the
until
program,
then,
it's supposed to come back.
Because they're gonna continue to use those if they.
Right.
Right.
It's a revolving fund.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right, but up
Yeah.
to a certain date, and then the
Yeah.
money's supposed to come back.
the remaining amount. So if their loans go bad, we don't get our money back. To me, it sounds like a grant, but they said it was a loan, so
It's a strange,
it's, in my mind,
Who's they?
the county court.
It's
You.
Leslie.
Don't look at me.
Yeah, it was all Leslie's fault.
Way to go, Les.
Yeah, I mean.
Moving
yeah.
on. So other questions about,
It's a
do you have
reimbursement.
more questions about
I do have a couple more
business?
questions.
Go for it.
The roundup is listed here, and I know it's
Okay,
changed.
they paid off.
Oh, they did, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's zero, I see that,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, before
I
it
didn't
was
say
sold,
that.
the loan got paid off.
Okay, because
Yeah.
it had changed hands a couple times. Stanford, what is Wayne using his name for?
Building. We've had a loan on that building for almost 20 years.
A building?
You can go inspect the premises if you'd like.
It's a commercial building?
Yes.
yep.
What happens to that commercial building?
Well, he used to have a repair business, but I don't know if it's currently out.
So, Archetti has his small engine repair business, there's a hair salon, and
Oh,
then
okay.
Wayne kind of operates his electrical business out of it.
Okay. I just want to see where our money's been going, is my question.
And that was refinanced at some point in time. So it's a long-term loan. It's like the Liberty Theater's been refinanced at some point in time.
Okay. Just my question.
And the only one that's not current is the Liberty Theater. But we've sent them a letter which has been returned, and we're gonna, work on that. Their loan is due in July, the Liberty Theaters. But it's also for sale.
Well, as is the hardware store and the pheasant grill.
Correct.
So we have 3 businesses that we've loaned money to that are for sale. What's the TV co-op's repayment plan?
5 years, I believe, and it was yearly payments. Maybe it was 4, I'd have to go look at the exact
Annual
details.
payments, I
Annual
think that's
payments.
my question.
Yeah.
It's, I think it
It
says.
says 10-year
10-year
term.
10 years, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, due in 2029.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
But
That's cheap.
annual
Well,
payments. I guess that was my question, what's the payment
Yeah.
terms? Okay, of, let's see. Okay.
Port of Arlington.
Port of Arlington is a building up on Arlington Mesa. It's a
Flex
hangar.
building?
No,
Oh.
hangar.
Hangar.
They also,
See, I wrote down something else.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of an interesting, I think the city of Arlington might lend some money on that. I'd have to go look at the contract, but
Yeah,
I
those
think
guys
they make
does as
payments to
well.
the city of Arlington and us. And then Boeing, well, and Sutu makes payments to
Yeah.
them. Sutu's owned by Boeing, that's why I said Boeing.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions on where our money is at?
Explain it, that explains it. That is, you know, it's a background on.
Yeah, and then I did a real cursory analysis yesterday, and we looked back to, since the inception to about 2008, and basically, as far as interest charge and losses were 0, it was a wash, so some businesses or whatever got sponsored, and that was a benefit to the community, but as far as the financial gain, there wasn't any. And then to present, we probably had about a return of about 1%, which is, that's exclusive of any sort of management in our office. So I estimate those costs are, they're pretty minimal, maybe an hour a month, so, you know, $500 a year. Barring any sort of legal, you know, because we do talk to the lawyer occasionally there, so there's other expenses, but we generally don't attempt to recover those from the loan program because we're overhead the treasurer's offices. So it's just part of our normal management duties. So my only comment would be maybe the interest rates have been a little favorable because generally they've matched what the bank would have given them if they could have gotten a loan from the bank. And I think that's nice, but
They're higher risk if the bank.
That's
Well-
why they're not getting a loan.
Yeah.
I'm a little
Yeah,
torn on this one
that's
because, you know,
my-
my deal is I'm supposed to invest the funds, the best return and the least amount of risk, and I don't feel that way about some of these.
Right.
But, you know, there is a community benefit. Ultimately, it's not my program, so I just manage it. But that's my comments. I mean, I think the interest rates are maybe a little too favorable. And there are some of those loans that, you know, I don't know, I think are kind of risky, but I don't know I'm not well, I've said it about 1,000 times, I'm not a bank, so.
That was
I've heard you say that.
very
Yeah,
first call.
yeah,
We are not a bank.
some people are broken record.
But I wasn't gonna say that because this was, I don't know, never mind. We are not a bank,
Right.
but we are.
But we are, I mean, and it's some of the loans I think are good from a community development standpoint.
Well, and the concept behind it is,
Yeah, I mean, it does help
it's a good concept and
yeah.
it does benefit.
Right, and so maybe this is a good time to
Everyone.
talk about what the ordinance says. So, you know, the ordinance, this is county law, this is what our county law says about this. There's a need to have a fund available within the county for business, existing businesses and startups. Frequently, conventional lenders will not lend the full amount required and there may be a gap. This fund is primarily to fill the gap. Loan applications will be considered for Gilliam County businesses. Interest and terms will be set by the county court. The fund will be on deposit at a FDIC insured local
And
bank.
that's something I attempt to have changed in the last,
Is it LGPI or?
well, it's in the LGIP. You can make a lot of arguments. The other thing is FDIC insurance does not cover
It only covers a $250,000.
$250,000, yeah. And Mike and I talked about that, you know, it's inaccurate, but whatever, continue, I'm sorry.
So this fund will be capped annually at $750,000. Side note, in the actual ordinance, it still says 500.
Right,
Policies and procedures for this fund were adopted in 2010, revised in 2012. And again, 2017, the current 2017. So I think that the big point there is this is supposed to be gap financing.
yeah, and I think that's been part of the issue is that some of these loans, they just couldn't get financing from anybody else. So we are the sole and some of them we've had to take a second position basically in order for them to secure the other financing. So our chances of collections if something goes wrong are diminished. But, you know, gap financing, I mean, that's where you are.
Yeah, well, that is the thing, right? If the idea is that it's gap, that probably there's a bank that wants to be in first position.
Right.
And so that's gonna be
Yeah,
inherent
we're,
in
yeah,
the.
we're definitely gonna be in second position all the time, that's
Did you have something you wanted to say?
No.
You looked like you were on the verge of.
I was just like, next.
She's ready for the next
She-
one.
She's looking,
Wait till you see my slide though.
Oh, go back.
What do you want to do?
Okay, I want to take a little break.
yes. I need more coffee. It's 10:15,
Can
I
we
still
take,
have
like-
coffee, so.
Seriously though, could we take maybe like a 5-minute break?
Yes.
And come back?
Yes, yes, seriously.
Before we dig into the big question. We're back in
Oh,
work
it is on
session.
the application.
Okay,
So he knows he's gonna have to do that, so that's good.
the $1 million question.
So do you
No, I think
want
it's-
one for January?
$750,000 question.
Specific.
Okay,
If that's okay.
where does the court want to go with the business development loan program? Sherry, you seem like you had some thoughts on this.
One of the things I learned at county college was we're not a bank. But we also have an ordinance that says we are a bank, so.
We do. Of course, ordinances can be changed. They're written by us, they can be changed by us, if that's something that you wanted to explore.
Well, I don't know, when I look at the businesses that we supported, currently support, I wouldn't want them to have closed because they couldn't get all the funding they needed. That's not productive for our county in any way.
So maybe instead of, so it sounds like, am I hearing that you would like to keep, because the big question is to keep it or not to keep it, right? I mean, that's the first question we need to answer. Do we want to provide loans?
Yes.
So you're a yes?
Yes.
Okay. I'm fine with that too.
I just would hate to see, I mean, in Arlington, we have enough businesses closing. Condon's business is struggling in the winter time. We don't want them to close. This is, I mean, that, to me, that's, that our county, everybody loses.
Okay.
We don't want that.
So then the question becomes, what changes, if any, do we want to make to the way that we are facilitating these loans? This is a draft.
Yeah.
So, glad you brought that up. And maybe my friends across the table can give more clarity, but I cannot find
There-
a finalized version, approved version of these policies and procedures.
To my knowledge,
Just
I asked the
never
former
finished.
court administrator and the person who is administrating the program outside of the treasurer's office, and that's what you get.
This is all there is.
This was the other document that they gave to me that is GEODC's, or originally, I think this was the main source of the application. This is not a draft. But at one
I
point,
would highly suggest that
So that was, yeah,
we address the
That
policies.
was
my
So
number
this is
one
the
on there
first
too,
thing
but
we need
big
to do
brief.
then, truly, if we're going to continue the program, is we need to finalize the policies and procedures so that we actually have a document that we're.
it would be very helpful.
That would be a great thing to do.
So what you sent us was, did you make changes to it, or was that what we have at this current date?
That's what
That's what we're operating
the
on.
treasurer has in his
And I've
files.
tried to get that updated multiple times, and.
Not just updated.
and I have
but
found-
it's-
Fixed,
There's grammatical,
adopted.
Yeah, there's all
word-
kinds of problems in there.
Word errors.
I have found about 3 different draft versions of it from 2012 when it was looked at, but I've never found anything that said final, approved, with a signature on it, anything like that.
Because this doesn't even have a signature page.
Well,
That's where we're
That's
at.
where we're at.
Okay,
okay.
so I guess that's our first project, is to review the policies and procedures.
In the back.
I found it. And then wouldn't that answer our question, where do we want to go, once we get this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
we will review this, and so do we want to do that here and now, one page at a time together, or do we want to each take our copy of it and
Good question.
make
Are there,
notes and?
Did you have,
I really, I don't know.
I think maybe,
I think there's some stuff that probably should be, some higher level things that should be looked at maybe today, get going.
Okay.
See, I might be an advocate for clean slate on that one, because I think just trying to modify a document, I don't know, it seems less efficient maybe than just saying, hey, this was a draft. Maybe you like it, or maybe you don't, I don't know about that. If you like it, you can go ahead and change it, but maybe it doesn't meet your goals at all, I don't know.
Here's a question, I'm just gonna throw this out here. Since we are not a bank, and we would be making assessments on the riskiness of a loan, is there an entity out there that administers loans that, for instance, we could partner with?
It used to be the
There used to be a
GEODC.
GEODC. And we do have a copy of their policies and
That
procedures.
we would provide, in essence, create a fund that's a revolving fund for Gilliam County, but that our county staff and us as a court would not be making the funding decisions on. That we would, in essence, sort of cede to somebody who,
We're not going.
My comment down here, I'm not a loan officer, not really my area of expertise.
Exactly. Which
Yeah.
falls right
As I was
into
reading
that.
through this, trying to figure out,
How
oh, is
do
that
we
right
make
or is
that
that not
assessment if
right?
it's risky or not? I mean, I don't know.
Well,
And
in old loans I've looked at, when the GEODC was managing it, they would fill out a recommendation based on the application process. They handled, it looked like the whole application
Basically, everything other
process.
than the approval.
And then they would make a recommendation to the court
It's easy for you to say.
that, that said, you know, either I recommend you don't fund this, it's too risky, or go
But the
ahead.
decision comes back to the
And
county court.
then, yes,
Right.
and sometimes the court did decide, let's go ahead and fund it because this is good
And
for
the
the
community.
community.
I think a big part of why that relationship went away was the court was too often
Just
Superseding it
overruling,
anyway.
saying, no, we're gonna fund them anyways.
because it's good for the community.
So what's,
Well, 'cause
so
I was-
what was the point?
because I was looking at maybe, I mean, I don't know, I haven't fully thought this through yet, so I'm saying this out in the public ecosphere, ceding that authority
Yeah, I,
and saying
So,
that
Another entity would make the final call too, not just a recommendation?
if we are careful in who we select, and there's somebody that has a long history of making economic development type loans and assessing risk, and that we still meet the spirit, I think, of the ordinance, we're just not trying to assess that risk ourselves as lay people who
Right.
really don't have the expertise. I mean, one of the things it does do is it removes any sort of pressure that different businesses might try to exert on us to make loans that are in their favor, but that may not be good loans for the county.
I think the challenge is though, as a business person, I would have made a whole bunch of these loans.
And that's what I was
And I
gonna say
think
is.
that's the
if-
real
if you-
issue.
If a loan manager's looking at these are all no's.
I mean, a lot of
That's
these
why
were
they're
no's,
coming
were
to the
complete
county.
no's from all the banks.
And if
And
they
they were
get-
complete
if they
no's from
get
GEO.
it-
I mean, we can go look at the files in my office if you want. but
There's a
yeah,
lot of-
A lot of them were recommended not to be funded. And they did pay. I mean, it wasn't, well, like I said before, 2008, you know, they broke even for the first period and we're marginally ahead at
Right,
this point.
because the bank's looking at them from the risk of default, whereas the county court may want to look at it more as benefit to the county, so maybe it's worth that little bit more risk, because it keeps the business in town, whereas the bank is gonna say, no, it's too risky, I don't care if that business goes down.
So then it would be a benefit to have the court still making the final call, but then you run into the risk that the entity would feel like, what's the point if the court's just gonna overrule?
Right. Well, what's the point of having, what is the point? There isn't any spent.
Basically, just so the documentation is,
I think we still want the recommendation though, don't you? I mean,
I don't know how this could go anywhere you guys open if you.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
exactly. You know what your risk is.
I mean, there's other things that the county that, you know, recommendations we made, you don't have to follow them. So, I mean, one of them's like the compensation board, right? They make a recommendation to county court that this is what the elected officials ought to be compensated, but that ultimately, it's still the county court's decision. So you can go with or against the recommendation. But it could be helpful, it might be instructive. I mean, it goes back to maybe I don't pretend to be good at figuring out the risk all these is, because there's a lot of moving parts, and I don't do it every day. So,
Now, my question is, the policies and procedures draft said it will be the duty of the loan review committee to determine eligibility and propose a loan.
Do we have one of
Who is
those?
the loan, who is on the loan review committee? If right, previously it was the GODC, and now it's,
Nobody?
it's not? So who?
What it says here in the draft policies, there's not
No
page
page
numbers,
number.
but
I
it's,
have read them online.
Well, I
back.
have page, don't I don't
Yeah. It says loan review committee shall be appointed by the court. Court shall have discretion to appoint a representative group from Gilliam County, including but not limited to Gilliam County Treasurer, at least one representative from Bank of Eastern Oregon, at least one representative from PCDC, one at-large member representing the interests of the area of Gilliam County north of Bullocks, one at-large member representing the interests of area of Gilliam County south of Bullocks.
So was there,
I don't know if there is a
I don't know.
loan committee.
We never.
so
We've
these
been
loans that
serving
are
as
still
kind of
on our
the loan
books were
committee.
all reviewed by,
Some were reviewed by GODC until they quit doing that for
Right.
us, and the rest of them have been reviewed by the county board.
just by the county court?
Correct. And a lot of them outside of even, well, I shouldn't say a lot, some of them even outside of a formal application. Because this wasn't adopted either. I just think they
So
should
they
have an
just came and asked
application,
for-
and I've lobbied for an application, and this is what I've encouraged the county court to use.
But we have,
Does he do this too, or does he just roll his eyes?
Who, me?
Check.
Oh. Sometimes.
I know where he got his eye roll, because
Yeah.
he blinked his lashes.
Sometime.
So I'll tell you sometime what that means.
Okay. I'll appreciate that.
so, okay.
So that, I mean, that's just the way it's operated. And it ultimately, it's the county court's money, and they decide what to do with it, because we don't have an adopted policy procedure.
So how about this as a basis to start? Can we be in agreement that we are not going to loan any money to anybody until this is,
Yes.
We don't have any money to loan till July 1st.
well, perfect, but even if it takes us,
That helps.
even if it takes us longer than that we are not gonna do these piecemeal,
No,
willy-nilly
yes,
things
yes.
until we have a system.
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
so that's the starting point.
We need to decide if we're
So,
gonna take this recommendation
Committee
for
to
policies and procedures.
rebuild it.
yeah, so that's the next question. Do we, well, to me, the next question is, do we want that review process to happen in-house? The way it was structured,
By this.
by this?
Mhm.
Or do we want to see if there's an organization? Because what I'm thinking is, if we partner with an organization, they may have a loan agreement and policies and procedures that could be more easily modified than us just starting from square one.
Yes.
Unless we want to do it in-house, in which case, obviously, we need to create those.
Or if we want to go off of this,
Yeah.
or start with this, or not.
So to me, the first kind of decision point is it an in-house process? Or are we looking for someone who has some expertise and may be able to have some templates that we can utilize to create a policy and an application?
And these people that have this expertise, are we thinking that maybe they would also serve as the loan committee?
Potentially, yeah.
And do we have people like this? Do we have anybody in mind?
I mean, we would need to explore with maybe an economic development district. I don't know who else we would look at. I just thought that might be a way for us not to be the bank,
Yeah.
but to still,
See if there's anybody out there.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
okay. So, this is gonna be a short session then.
But a productive one. I mean,
Yeah.
because we're at square one.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, is that a conversation that we want to restart with GEODC? Do we want to, I don't know if MCAD would even be able to do that since we're not in their service territory. But I could ask the question.
I don't think it would hurt to check in with GEODC,
Okay.
go from there.
Ask them all, see what they have to say.
Well, that's it, yeah.
I think I maybe reach out to both of them and see. Because GEODC may be like, nope, we've been down that road.
We'll play there.
So, okay. So I will take that as my sort of marching orders to have initial conversations with the development districts and see what, if anything, they might be able to help us with. And then are there any other entities out there
Right,
that
yeah.
can play that role?
Right, and that's something we don't know that we need to get.
One thing we might look at is Morrow County, I believe, has a program similar to this. And I don't know if it's a county or court funded and operated thing. So it might be worthwhile looking at how they've structured that, how they're making their loan decisions.
Well,
And maybe
our board
borrowing.
makes loans.
Yeah.
I don't know how theirs are structured, but
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, maybe see what Morrow County is up to.
And is there somebody in the AOC who might be able to give us some guidance too?
I mean, we can ask.
I mean, they're the ones that said we're not a bank, but.
I mean, we could ask if other counties have loan programs that maybe we could model and see other, I mean, maybe they've got port districts that are.
I mean, part of this
running
is
after
just
that.
policies and procedures. I mean, really, it goes back, we need some legal counsel to review a lot of that just to make sure. And
Exactly.
I don't feel comfortable just sitting down and writing it myself.
At a
Just-
glance, it didn't look like it had been
Reviewed by anybody.
reviewed by legal counsel, because it doesn't have a lot of legal
Terms.
No, I mean, there's typos, there's all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff.
Right.
So just real quick, I did look up the Morrow County Equity Fund, which is their loan program, and it runs through GODC.
Yeah.
So it might be worth asking that
And
question.
I know
one
at some
day.
point a couple years ago, GEODC had been, I talked to the county court. And I believe at that point, I know they still did loans.
Looks like they have an internal loan review committee as well as GODC.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe where we are is doing a little bit more research on what our neighbor is up to, or Morrow County. Maybe we can, Sherry, you and I can touch base with our mentors.
I was thinking that same
About
thing.
that.
Give Dawn a call.
Mhm. And then they may also have applications and policies that we could
We could reach out to Gary too.
borrow.
Yeah, I think all of the surrounding counties, I
Yeah,
mean, they all,
Frederickson's on.
most of them anyways have these programs as well.
Sounds good.
And get something that's maybe a better starting point than what we're working with here. And in the meantime, no loans, folks. We're out of the banking business until at least July 1st.
Enjoy it while it
Well, until we get
lasts.
something structured, there's no structure in what we have.
No, we're
now.
still, there's no loan for it.
We want structure.
Yeah, we still have those loans
Still
out, so
apply.
sorry, you guys are still in the banking business for a while, but
Sorry.
no new banking clients. Okay, so is there anything else related to this or the grants that we need to talk through? Sandy and I will do some research. I'm thinking that we do not need another work session until we get back some good information
Yes.
on the loan side, which, based on what our schedule is starting to look like, you guys are
You have a little
gonna,
more time, you have a little more time on this one.
you're gonna
because-
love me, that we might go ahead and do our research and maybe table this until after we get the budget passed.
There you go.
And then look at it June timeframe, maybe June, July revisit. And put some, and folks are just gonna have to be on hold if they wanna go home. Sorry.
There's no money.
No money to loan.
We're out of money.
After that.
We're out of money. And that way we can dig in when we're not trying to also do budget and everything else that we need to try to move through. That makes sense?
Yes.
So I don't know that we had formally scheduled any other work sessions beyond today, so I don't know that we're technically canceling any, we're just not holding any future ones until.
No, I didn't have anything on my calendar.
Okay.
The 13th, we made, what is it, my calendar, till 2, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're gonna have some scheduling discussions this afternoon, get ready. We got a heavy load. Anything else? If not, anything else related to this? Because I'll adjourn the work session then.
Okay, I was just gonna